Today, we're speaking about two of the world's oldest surviving civilizations, Jews and Hindus, two religions that never sought to conquer the world, yet have repeatedly survived conquest. My guest, Rajiv Malhotra, believes Jews and Hindus are now facing similar ideological pressures, from radical Islamism to Western academic movements. Are Israel and India fighting the same civilizational battle? Rajiv, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm delighted to be here.
Do you believe that Jews and Hindus have more in common than most people realize?
Yeah, I think so. As you already said in your introduction, both are very old. Both have a history of mutual respect for others and not conquering anybody. And I think the reason is that in the case of Judaism, God gives Jews a mandate on what they are supposed to do, not what they are supposed to require other people to do. There's no mandate to turn the world into Jews, and similarly for Hindus. The mandate is self-realization. I as Rajiv, have to pursue my path to self-actualize, become a better person, become more dharmic, and my path forward for through enlightenment has nothing to do with somebody else doing it or not doing it. I mean, I have to evolve myself into a better person. I'm not a franchisee that God has appointed to run the world for him, or to kick ass, as people would say, and force things on other people. That's not my job description. That God can do on his own. He has enough capability to do so. So the Hindu is not asked to take over the world on behalf of God and do certain things because God just can't do it. He's too lazy to do it, or any of that stuff. Hindus don't have any such mandate. So this is a very, very interesting parallel, that Jews have been given a particular role to play. And in the case of Hindus, the whole metaphysics and cosmology and theology, if you will, is of an individual matter, individual progress in the spiritual path. So these are pillars of not being interested in taking over the world. There is nothing of that sort, like in Christianity, to evangelize and expand, and in Islam particularly to do so. There's nothing of that sort in the Hindu tradition.
Now, both traditions survived thousands of years of persecution. How did they do that?
Well, I can tell you about Hinduism. So, in the case of Hinduism, the atrocities against Hinduism are like unparalleled. People don't realize how many hundreds of millions of Hindus have been persecuted, killed. The Muslims came, and they came in waves and waves and waves, destroyed the temples, burnt the books, burnt the centers of learning, destroyed them, took slaves, killed a large number of people, took slaves back to Central Asia, which is well documented now, took slaves back to the Middle East, which is also well documented. So the atrocities were far worse than anything that ISIS is doing today, or Al-Qaeda is doing, or any of those people are doing. These are well documented by Muslim historians. The invaders brought historians with them, scribes, to document their accomplishments so that they could go back and claim credit. And a lot of these books were written in Arabic and Persian and Turkish, and they are available. If somebody wants, and they can write to me, and I will send you the links where these books are now available. They've been translated into English, and you can read them. You can read the pride with which they were showing off how many, large numbers of Hindus they've killed, and with what atrocities and so on. So that part is clear. Now, how did Hindus survive? So this is where it's very interesting. The similar atrocities against pre-Christian Europeans, who were pejoratively called pagans, the Wicca people, for example, but they had no formal learning system of learning. They had nothing like Sanskrit, which is a very formal system of learning, and the Shastras, which are the texts, are written in a very codified way, very formal way, and so this formality, like you have some algorithms that are well defined, well established, or you have engineering diagrams that are well established. So this formal knowledge it was so robust that even when people were killed, even when houses of worship were killed, and Hindu culture was destroyed, these formal texts were such that one could revive Hinduism over and over again. Now, how did these texts survive if manuscripts were burnt? And well, the texts survived because there was an oral tradition. The tradition was that the Brahmins, who were the keepers of this knowledge, memorized, and every single text has a lineage of people whose job is to preserve that particular text. And unlike in the Abrahamic tradition, there's no one holy book. There's library. There's a whole library of these texts. And for each of the major texts, like there are 4 Vedas, so there are families who know a particular Veda by heart, and their job is to teach it to the next generation, and then the next generation, and this continues. And there'll be many such families preserving a particular text. So there's redundancy built into this, and this is not vulnerable to manuscripts being burnt. This is not vulnerable to individuals being killed. This is not vulnerable to public discourse and public worship being stopped, because as long as in the privacy of their homes there are such people, they'll keep the knowledge alive and they'll pass it on to their children. So this intergenerational oral transmission of very formal texts is what differentiates Hinduism from most faiths that could not survive. It's not because of lack of destruction of Hinduism, but this particular method of transmission was very effective. So writing comes later in the Hindu history, and writing is considered to be a lesser form of knowledge than oral, because writing, just think about it. Writing is one directional. It goes from left to right or right to left or whatever, but it's one dimensional. Whereas your cognition is parallel. I mean, so your cognitive system is parallel, and the oral tradition is able to go into many levels of oral when you're within your mind, when you are thinking, and when you memorize things. There is intonations. There is the unconscious. The oral memory goes into your unconscious. So the depth of spiritual awakening made possible by mantra is oral, is very profound. And I've been practicing mantra meditation most of my life, since I was in my 20s, and now I'm over 75. So I can tell you this. So this is something you would not get by reading some stuff. So this giving priority to the oral tradition for the sake of one's spiritual evolution helped also in protecting it from destruction. So I think it's a very sophisticated question you've asked as to why did the Hindus survive how did they survive in spite of all that happened?
Wow. It's very fascinating listening to you, because it's the same thing in Judaism. We also have the written tradition and the oral tradition, and the oral tradition was passed down generation to generation, father to son. It was only written down, generations later, when it started to become forgotten, it was written down. But I think it was very similar to what you were saying about the Hindus. Now, why do you think that Jews and Hindus are often successful in education and business and things like that?
So, the thing is that knowledge has always been a priority for Hindus. And the reason is that success is not go and conquer somebody and grab their wealth. And, it's not like that. It's not like let the other guy make his money and I'll go and capture it. It's not the mentality of a bandit. It's never been like that. There's no precedence in Hindu history where people went outside India to conquer others. There were plenty of fighting with each other. I'm not saying Hindus are perfect. Hindus have had plenty of problems and plenty of infighting amongst themselves. But there never was a world conquest that we're supposed to go around doing this to other people. Because for one thing, India was very affluent, very high tech knowledge for its time, for its era, for the knowledge systems of its time were very sophisticated, and people from around the world came, and they considered it to be a wealthy place. That's why they came. I mean, Columbus wasn't looking for India when he discovered America. He wasn't looking for India just for the hell of it. He was looking for India because they needed a route. They needed a route that would bypass the Ottomans who had captured the land route. The Ottomans had captured the land route, which brought Indian goods and Chinese goods to Europe. Europe needed those goods, and the Ottomans captured it. And so, the being Muslims, they would not allow the trade to go through or have exorbitant markups and tariffs and all that stuff for their time. So, to work around that, a sea route had to be found, and Spain and Portugal and all these people, they were the big sea-going, ocean-going, voyage people in the shipping, discoverers of using navigation rather than land. They were discoverers using navigation, and they were rivals. The Portuguese and the Spaniards were rivals. So Spain sponsored things to go west across the Pacific, thinking they'll reach India. Columbus thought he had found India, and that is when he landed, he called those people Indians. That's how the Native Americans became known as Indians, because he thought he discovered India. Wow. And the whole idea was to go to India. And Vasco da Gama, the Portuguese rival, he went around Africa, across the Indian Ocean, and he landed in India. So the two great powers of the world at that time were the Portuguese and the Spaniards. And their biggest competition was to find a sea route to India. So you have to ask, why would they do that? Why would they go to if it's a poor place or a God-forsaken place, why would they go through that? That's because finding a route was like a huge discovery, like a huge wealth was to be found, created, because you could do trade, you could go find all the good stuff that India had to offer, bring it to Europe, and so on. There's so much research I've done on how the Portuguese made tons and tons of money. The whole Portuguese Empire brought in medicines from India and various other kinds of things from India. And so the prosperity of India, the knowledge systems of India have been tremendous for a very long time. And that tradition continues till today in families, inside families. Whether the school systems are good or bad, whether the government is good or right, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, whatever the media may be like. The point is that it's a culture, part of the culture, family culture, that people sacrifice a lot to put their kids through the best education possible. They go and get extra jobs, they work hard, they deny themselves luxuries, but they want their kids well established through education. And this focus on education is what makes Indians very smart. All human beings have been properly endowed with lots of brains, but some of them, have other priorities. So you will find that a lot of Hindu kids are just quietly working very hard and trying to build a career, and staying out of trouble. So this is why it's not a coincidence that people of Hindu origin are like that. There is a rationale, there is a desire on the part of the families to raise kids who are well educated.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that the success that Jews and Hindus have sometimes is used against them? Sometimes they're labeled as, quote unquote, privileged oppressors and things like that?
Yeah, Indians have been called white adjacent in this country by the DEI crowd. The DEI crowd is this whole woke is a Marxist. I've written a whole book called Snakes in the Ganga. Snakes in the Ganga. That is a book I have written on this whole syndrome, how places like Harvard, ironically funded by some misguided Indian businessmen, are promoting woke, Indian studies, Hindu studies through woke lens. So the wokeism basically is a Marxism idea that says that the world should be divided between exploiters and exploited, those who are persecuted and those who are being persecuted along the lines of race and religion and economic matters. So because the Hindus are doing well in this country, therefore they must be called oppressors. I mean, this is just how it works. It's a kind of a turning the class struggle into racism. It's a very racism thing. And therefore, meritocracy goes out the window. They don't believe in meritocracy. They don't believe that this guy worked very hard. You see, and he has better math scores and he's good in science and all that because of a reason. He worked very hard, and his parents worked very hard to put him through all this. So they feel that this is unfair. He's got an unfair advantage. The SAT scores and all the other admission criteria, if they went on merit, then the Hindus would fill up Harvard and all these kind of places, and many other people will not be allowed to get in because on merit. So therefore, we got to pull them down. I mean, that's very sad. It's a very tragic sort of reasoning. One argument I've given, which they don't like to hear, I was at one of these meetings in Princeton University. I live in Princeton, so I attend some of their meetings just for fun. So they were all full of this sort of thing that Indians are. It's an unfair situation that they're doing well compared to, say, African Americans in math and so on. And so then I said, why don't we also say that African Americans have an unfair advantage in basketball because they're taller, and I'm a short guy, and so you should have a special allowance for people like me, a special quota, like you want a special DEI quota for people not on merit basis but just on their race or something. So why don't you also have sports quota? And the U.S. Olympic team should have a quota for people who cannot get in on merit. And the basketball NBA should say that every team should have X% of, Indian people or whatever. I mean, you have a mediocre. Basically, you would be teaching mediocrity if you do that. If you get out of meritocracy and start having quotas on just to equalize, just to have a fair representation and all that, you will basically create mediocrity, and you will lose against other countries. If the U.S. Olympic team were like that, it would not be doing well. If any NBA team were like that, it would not be doing well. They pick the best players, whoever they are. So it turns out that blacks are better in basketball, they're better built and all that than Indians, and Indians are better in maths. Why is this a problem? What is wrong? God made diversity. God didn't make all the trees equally tall, or some have better qualities in certain respects, some have better qualities in other respects. So similarly, humans are diverse. We have different looks and qualities and cultures, and in certain types of performance, certain people do very well. Like in track and field, Africans do the best. So why is that why should it be a problem? I'm not looking for that Indians should get a handicap advantage. They should be handicapped and given an advantage because, like in golf, because otherwise on merit they cannot run fast enough. I don't believe in any of that. I think we should celebrate the diversity of humankind, including the diversity of what their talents are like. Some people are better as artists. Some people know how to sing better. Some people know how to do maths better. So why is it that my area of expertise is being picked on and I'm going to be brought down so that others can be brought up, while there's no such quota system for singers or for athletes, etc.? So this whole thing is very unfair and unjust, and this is called social justice.
Yeah. Now, do you see a pattern between anti-Semitism and Hindu phobia?
Yeah, I see this pattern. I see that one of the tragedies in both cases is that a lot of the anti-Semitism is coming from Jews themselves. There are many Jews who are anti-Semitic, who somehow, out of whatever reason, they want to support the opposing side. They want to support Palestine and things like that. Similarly, you find a lot of Hindu phobia coming from Hindus. A kind of they bought into this Marxist colonial lens about what's wrong with Hinduism and all that, and so to westernize themselves and to be seen as liberals and to feel very proud that we are self-critical and so on. I mean, those are good qualities. Being self-critical is a good quality, but not self-hate. So this Hindu phobia has a lot of Indians themselves who are guilty of that. But what starts Hindu phobia, the real foundation of Hindu phobia is evangelists want to convert people by showing that they're no good and they're better off converting. And that applies to both Christianity and Islam. Uh, Christianity's expansion in India is through conversion. Islam's expansion is through birth rate and just demanding rights, pushing for more and more rights. There are many rights that Muslims have in India which they don't have anywhere else. I mean, this is very interesting. So, Hinduphobia is a sort of coming together of all these forces, and then you mix it up with Hinduphobia coming from people who have nothing to do with religion, but this is a kind of anti-India, and to be anti-India and to want to, compromise its sovereignty and its integrity. One of the many things people want to do is to undermine the civilization, because that will undermine the unity, the sense of unity of the country. And so Hindu phobia is also something that secular people who are not religious at all sometimes do, because they think that this is an effective way to attack India. So these are all the different kind of forces coming together, creating this Hindu phobia. And Hindu phobia is entrenched in the academy, in the American Academy of Religion, in the social sciences, in the humanities. They love to talk this way, and it's also in some of the laws, some of the civic society. It's in the media. These Washington Post, New York Times, many other CNN. These kind of things are full of Hindu phobic people. And so I started in the early 90s. I coined this term Hinduphobia, or made it popular. Somebody had used it 100 years earlier in a different context, and nobody knew about it. But I decided on the term Hinduphobia because it sounds like Islamophobia. And so whenever they say Islamophobia, I say, what about Hinduphobia? And it's hard for them to say, okay, we should fight Islamophobia, but not Hinduphobia. And so that's why I thought that this similarity would help. And it did help. At first, nobody wanted to support me. Wherever I went, Hindu temples didn't want to let me speak because it would be controversial. They were very controversy shy, and did not want to have discussions, debates, even with facts. Um, and I would bring in what the textbooks are saying. I would bring in what some professors said in college, all of that. But people were not interested in picking a fight, because the Indians felt in the U.S. that we're doing very well. Let's just keep our mouth shut and just do well. Kids are doing well. We're getting a big house. We have cars. We have jobs. We're making money. And let's not rock the boat. They were afraid, we'll be discovered as, they're doing well, and maybe something will go wrong, as if doing well is something to be guilty of. So rather than being proud of. So they were afraid of the consequences of making noise, or complaining. And so nobody wanted to help me. But gradually, I was able to show that things are getting worse. I was able to show that there is such blatant hatred, and it's affecting your kids and their self-esteem and their sense of identity in schools and colleges. Gradually, this movement picked up. I would say in the last 10 years, it's picked up quite nicely. But for the first 20, 25 years of my journey in this, it was very difficult for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think Israel and India are fighting the same ideological enemy?
Well, I wrote a paper on the Caliphate project, and it showed the history of the Caliphate, and throughout Islam's history, except for the last period of time after the Ottomans, there's always been a Caliphate, and the Caliphate is a world government under a Caliph who's a Muslim, and all the Muslims in the world are supposed to be one nation, Darul Islam, and all these man-made nations have no legitimacy, which is why Muslims find it natural to refute, defeat, undermine the constitution and the integrity of sovereign countries, because to them, Allah said that, hey, these are not that important. They should be superseded by one nation and dissolve all these separate nations. So this Caliphate project is the oldest project in Islam to bring this about. And that is the grand plan that they are working towards. So I have in this paper shown how Pew Trust surveys, many other kind of surveys in Muslim countries show that there is tremendous support for this. There's tremendous support for, Sharia. Sharia and this Caliphate are partners in the sense that if you establish Sharia everywhere, then you'll have, and it supersedes the constitution and the law of the land. It is God's law, and that takes precedence. Then if you have Sharia everywhere, which is what they ultimately want to, you have, in effect, a caliphate. You have a world government because it's one. So this caliphate and Sharia and other things related to it, the Halal project is a soft way to, a kind of indirect way to get in. All the love jihad, converting people, young people, duping them to get in, this hijab, aggressive hijab. So all these are ways of feeding towards the ultimate caliphate project. And so I feel that there is no separate Kashmir issue, and there is no separate Palestine issue from the caliphate project. So I wrote this paper saying that Palestine issue, Gaza-Palestine issue, and the Kashmir issue, they are not localized territorial disputes. It's the local footprint of a global war. I mean, there's a global ideological war which God has asked them to fight, and they're doing a good job, fighting that. From their point of view, they're doing a good job. And wherever there's an opportunity and there's enough concentration, they have to take over and make it Sharia, make it part of the caliphate, towards the caliphate idea. So Kashmir and Palestine are the same problem. Kashmir is not something you can understand through, legally what happened in 1947 or this year or that year and who did what and what the UN resolution was. That is all legalese, which is coming in the way to understanding what is the deep root issue. The real root issue is that a territory like that has to become Islamic territory run under Islamic laws. That is what it is. So I would say that both Israel and India are fighting the Caliphate project ultimately. And another thing that I'm working on is the idea, critiquing the construct of Kafir. Kafir, the non-Muslim, the infidel, according to Islam. So if you search, and I've done a lot of this research, there are 90 references to the word kafir in the Quran and in the Hadith. So it is not something that came later. It's not something that, they can say, okay, this is a misinterpretation, because the word appears. And the word means non-believer. Anybody who is not a Muslim is a kafir. So the question then becomes, what is to be done with them according to the teachings? According to the holy books, what is to be done to them is pretty nasty. I mean, you can have a nice approach at first and see if they will convert. You can have nasty approach at the other end and kill them. You can have in-between approach to make them slaves and let them live. Or maybe a little more generous and put a jizya tax, which is a tax on infidels. Wherever you put them on the spectrum, you're not respecting them. And in fact, it is very explicit in saying that respecting the non-believer is actually disobeying God. So I must say, I'm not against Muslims. I'm against the radical aspects of their belief. I have lots of very good friends who are Muslims. I respect them. I was raised with Muslim friends in school. My father lived in Lahore until the partition. They had to run away. And he had Muslim friends. Muslims came to our house. So I found Muslims to be extremely good people. Lots of them, very good people. Good, intelligent people, smart people, kind people, helpful people. But you see, one has to separate all that from certain tenets that are enforced, that are in the hands of the clergy, the imams and the muftis and the mullahs that really enforce these beliefs. And there is no provision to remedy, to amend. There's no provision to amend. So this is a permanent fixture, and this keeps coming up once in a while, every so often. When we feel that we are done with that and we all be one happy family of human beings across all religions, then again this starts. So this is the whole history. So I think that my feeling is that we need to get some good Muslims on our side. We need to find good, broad-minded, liberal, compassionate, good human being Muslims, and I know many of them, but they are afraid. They are afraid, but privately they are on board that we should all be working together. There should be no construct of Kafir. We don't need this Caliphate project. There are Muslims who are like that, and that's my hope.
Mm-hmm. Now, so it seems that, as you're saying, Israel and India are fighting the same fight. Do you think that there are some things that Israel can learn from India or India can learn from Israel when it comes to fighting radical Islam?
So I think that India has a lot to learn from Israel, which is that you need hard power. You need hard power. You cannot be mumbo jumbo mixed up. You need to have a very solid defense industry, weapons industry. You need to have mandatory military service. I mean, these are good things that Israel has done, and I wish India would learn some of these things. Uh, uh, you know, that's so Israel is a very good example from that point of view. Also, the way the Israelis have and the Jews have come together and consolidated their funding, their donations, their contributions into certain institutions, and these institutions are very effective for lobbying. And even though they have not been able to do this in the academic world because there's so much anti-Semitism, which is very sad, but at least on Capitol Hill, they do have a voice. They can also, and the way the Jewish billionaires, some of them have come forth and made a statement, not worrying about what's good for my business, but hey, here I'm a Jew and I don't like all this. These are examples for Hindus. Hindu billionaires have not come forth to stick their neck out for Hindus. They're always into political correctness and being goody-goody and all that. And the Hindu organizations have not been able to come together with enough unity of purpose and funding to be able to have the same impact in US politics and US media, you see. So those are examples. Those are some very important things that Hindus can learn. We are going to do a conference in Britain, first week of June, with Hindus in Britain, and you're welcome to come and attend. We would love to see Jewish people there. We are going to discuss, the state of affairs in Britain, because I think that's become even worse than the United States. There are places you cannot go to if you're not a Muslim. It's not safe, and there are many Hindu billionaires who have left Britain. The Lakshmi Mittal family, they are the steel tycoons and one of the richest families in Britain, Hindus, they have moved out. And many other British Hindus are in the process of moving out. They made announcements, they're leaving. I have some friends who have left. So this is a kind of topic that we need to raise. We need to raise this topic to see why are Hindus not safe? Why do Hindus feel the overall theme of the conference is, are Hindus safe? And we were inviting the British members of parliament. We're inviting people from various leadership roles in various societies and Muslims. We're going to have some panels where Muslims will be speaking. And we want to have a free kind of exchange with everybody on certain topics. And so if you know of Jews or you yourself would like to come, we would welcome it.
Thank you. Do you think that both countries are misunderstood in Western media? Like sometimes Israel and India are referred to as colonial states, etc.
Yeah, I mean, India has existed historically for a very long time. I mean, this is it's not before the Muslims came. There were many Indian empires and kingdoms, and for a very long time. The modern definition of a nation state is a more recent event. So obviously, that did not exist, but that kind of a nation state did not exist in Britain. Even Britain was not a nation state according in the modern sense, thousands of years ago. Nor was Germany. Germany was not. France was not. United States didn't even exist. So you cannot take a modern construct of nation state, with certain institutions and so on, and say that India didn't have such a thing until the British came. Well, nobody had it, you see. So um, so you cannot delegitimize India. I mean, on that basis, Australia would not be considered a legitimate country, nor would Canada or USA or even Britain. India had its own sense of Rashtra. Rashtra is the closest term to nation. It doesn't mean the same thing exactly, but it's a very old term. The word Rashtra is in the Rig Veda. It's a Vedic term from the oldest texts of India. So the term existed for a very long time, and it refers to the geography and seeing it as a collective entity, and who are the rulers, what is their responsibility, who are the public, what is their responsibility, and how the whole thing should be run. The Arthashastra is an amazing treatise on politics and economics for a Rashtra. So the constructs existed, but they were not like a modern nation state. So it's an unfair criteria to try and see if India fits, traditional India, pre-British India fit the idea of a modern nation state. It did not. But that's not the relevant criteria. And I think the same for Israel. If you look at the ancient history, there was no Palestine. Am I right? There was no Palestine. There was no such thing as a Palestine. So that's the modern construct. But Israel existed long back.
Thousands of years.
Yes.
What is the difference between political Islam and ordinary Muslims? Is radical Islam a fringe movement, or is it rooted in the theology?
So that's a very, very controversial question, and I love it. I love these kind of questions. The politically correct thing to say is that Orthodox Islam is very peace-loving. You don't have these jihad construct, and you don't have this Kafirs as infidel construct, and no holy wars, and you don't have Caliphate, and you don't have all those, and these constitute extremism. But the fact is that these constructs exist from the very beginning of Islam, and they're codified in their holiest books. So I don't know how you get out of that. Okay, now that doesn't mean that every Muslim believes in that. Luckily, not every Muslim believes in that. But the clergy does. The clergy does. The Islamic institutions that are based on orthodoxy do. And orthodoxy dominates the Islamic world. You see? So now Saudi Arabia is doing some very amazing things to de-radicalize and liberalize Islam. And so is UAE and various other places. It remains to be seen how enduring that'll be. It remains to be seen. So far, they're in the right direction. We should encourage that. But they're not willing to officially amend the texts that call for violence against non-Muslims. They're not willing to do a search on all the places where Kafir is mentioned, Jihad is mentioned, all of that, and say, okay, this is a listing of all these things, and we're not going to be using this anymore. They're not willing to do that. Okay, or we have resolution that the meaning of these words is different now, from now onwards, for the new era. They're not willing to do that. So just being quiet, being silent about what's problematic does not solve the problem. It just takes it underground. And at some point in time, some future leaders may come and resume all that, which is what the whole story has been in the past several centuries. To really reform Islam, it has to be an internal movement. You and I can't do it. US can't do it with bombing Iran and all, no matter what they do. They cannot reform Islam. There has to be a reformation movement from within, like happened in Christianity. But the Christian Reformation was a bloody affair, took a couple of centuries, lots of internal fights and violence. And there were people on both sides who were willing to fight for it. And so the question is, why aren't there such people in Islam? And that's what it would take. And it requires reformed institutions that have a completely different interpretation of the theology. And that is not happening. Just to amend social norms and say, okay, they don't have to wear a hijab and they can drive a car, women can drive a car, and the Kafirs can have their temples and all that, is a very good first step and a good accommodation. Okay. But to make it a permanent thing, you have to reform the institutions and challenge the interpretation and replace it with a new interpretation of the basic theology. That's what I hope, I mean, I don't know if I'll live to see that. Maybe it'll never happen, but that's the kind of ideal we should be hoping for.
Mhm.
And it can only happen from within.
It seems you have countries like the UAE and Dubai, places like that, where they don't, you don't see jihad, you don't see terrorism like you see in other places.
In UAE, the majority of the population are non-local people. They are imported workers, and the biggest percent of them are Indians. And, there is something to be said for that. I mean, the Indians are in all kind of jobs and doing very well and flourishing and all that. So, I mean, I'm sure over the last few decades, this has had some influence. Saudi Arabia has a lot of Indians, but they are not in those same level of jobs. But Saudi, somehow they've had a change of heart. They've realized that to modernize, to bring in technology, to go beyond the oil economy, they need to bring in artificial intelligence, and they want to be a center with all these hubs and data centers and so on, to provide the compute facility. Because they have the energy, and these are energy guzzlers. They're gas guzzlers, if you will, these data centers for AI. And so they have a $1 trillion type investment program to build these huge data centers with the American collaboration and turn them into a post-oil economy, which is very smart. They're doing all that. And then, you see how Qatar and UAE have turned into lots of tourism, lots of very modernized, westernized, whether it's Formula One, whether it is, tournaments in football or cricket or whatever. They just really into the modern lifestyle. And all the young people I know, when they go there, they want to live there because there's such nice places. So they have realized that if that is their future, which I'm glad for the Muslim world that these people are able to think like that, uh, it's really nice that they have such leaders. It's good that they're doing that. It is very good that they're doing that. But I just would like it to be permanent. I would like it to be such that there is no way they can go back.
Mhm.
That would be nice.
Speaking of Qatar, it seems that on the one hand, they do have some modernity and things like that, but on the other hand, they fund terrorism. They
Yes.
shield Hamas leaders, and
Yes.
They're funding the Muslim Brotherhood and all these other things that they do. So they're playing both
They're
hands.
playing both sides. I mean, if you look at Al Jazeera, which is a Qatari initiative, it's a very nicely done, very pleasant and all that. But if you every once in a while there's an article which is kind of really serious Hinduphobia. Serious
Mm.
Hinduphobia. I've been named in these kind of things myself personally. Okay, so uh, they are playing both sides. See, the Muslim success today is its strategy after 9/11 to play both sides. When 9/11 happened, it was very sad, but Muslims in this country were in trouble. They were being attacked. I don't like any of that happening because the average citizen hasn't done anything wrong, no matter what their religion is. They shouldn't be attacked. But they were being attacked. So then they spent a few years and came up with a very brilliant strategy. And the brilliant strategy was to buy out the left. Because the left are sophisticated, they are well educated, they are very intellectual, they know all the high flown language of Marxism and postmodernism and blah blah blah, and they're also greedy and they're also corrupt people. I mean, they're dishonest people. They are for sale. So they knew, they kind of started funding all these kind of liberal bastions, okay, won these guys over, and that became the woke movement, the unity of the liberal left and the Muslims. And for them, the Black Lives Matter was a galvanizing moment, because now you could bring these together with the blacks. So the woke movement was born. I mean, I have lots of compassion and love for black people. They've suffered a lot in history and they need all the help. But I don't think the left is going to help them. I don't think the problem is all the things they faced, but the solution is not to align with Islam and fight the jihad and or align with the Marxists. It's not going to solve their problem, and they're just being pushed around here and there. So this shows the strategic vision of the Islamic countries. Previously, it was Saudi Arabia and those kind of people who used to fund a lot of this liberal education. Now it's Qatar. Qatar is the largest funding source for many of these institutions in this country. And Qatar has now infiltrated the Republican Party. I mean, this is very interesting. But, Tucker Carlson has moved to Qatar. And he's become a Qatari. He just loves it. And he says this whole Palestine thing is the fault of Israel, and he's anti-Jews. He's become anti-Semitic, and he comes to meet Trump, and Trump loves him. And now all this Nick Fuentes, who's this self-claimed white supremacist, suddenly he started also saying nice praises for places like Qatar. So, those guys know how to bribe, where to bribe, how to do it, in what subtle way. So it's not considered corruption very blatantly, but they've given contracts, they've given them facilities, they've given them patronage, they boosted them, given them all the prime spots to make their media career. So they have actually taken a page out of China. China looked at who are the social media influencers and co-opted a large number of them and started paying them huge salaries. I mean, this has been written about, that there are large numbers of Western and in India, influencers who are funded by the Chinese, and now also by Qatar.
Wow.
So this is none of this is good news for Hindus, and I don't know. I guess not for the Jews either. But that's, we a guy like me cannot do a whole lot. I'm 75 plus, and I'm just nowadays just a philosopher and writing my books and so on. I'm not out in the front lines doing any of this stuff, but I'm reflecting, and it's not affecting me in any way for my personal life. But I feel sorry for the future of humanity, because this means that people with nefarious intentions, backed by God giving them orders, are on the march.
Yeah. Like, you see these pro-Palestine marches, and you have the alliance between the woke, like you said, the left, and the Islamists. But you think about their marching for Gaza. If they were in Gaza, they would not survive with their lifestyle, right?
Yes.
So a lot of this doesn't make any sense.
It's all hypocrisy. It's total hypocrisy. I mean, the biggest attack on LGBTQ is from the Muslims, for example.
Yeah.
Right. So, there's all these internal contradictions. And if you look at what Marxism wants, it would, if a good pure Marxist looked at the dogma of Islam, it would not stand up to what the Marxists want as a good society, and vice versa. If an honest Muslim looks at the ideology of the left, the atheist ideology and feminism and all the stuff, they would not take it either. So this coalition is filled with internal schisms and internal tensions and conflicts, but they have managed to keep it all together.
Mhm. Now, what are your thoughts on, Jewish and Hindu students facing hostility on some campuses
Yeah,
in the United States?
yeah. I mean, this is happening. You see, when I started my campaigns, there were the population of Hindu students was smaller, and the parents were still busy making their own livelihood and making their careers, and they were not so secure in this country, and nobody wanted to worry about that. They didn't pay attention. Plus, they didn't feel that that somebody like me should be supported because they themselves didn't feel very confident. But now Hindus are more confident. There are plenty of Hindus doing very well in various fields, and they have a large student population in universities. And so the plus a lot of people have been influenced by what I've been writing and speaking and all that. I supported the Hindu Student Council and various other organizations on campus. I went and fought the hard battles with professors who were Hinduphobic, and this became very popular, on the social media. So now I don't have to do any of this because there's lots of people doing it. Lots of people are doing it, and so they keep me informed, and I encourage it. And I once in a while they invite me, and I go and give a talk or something. But it's a self-perpetuating uh, counter movement that counters Hinduphobia on campuses. And I think lately there are counter movements against anti-Semitism,
Mhm.
but they are still not enough. They're still not enough. So in some campuses, when the Hindus are attacked or when the Jews are attacked, they come to each other's defense.
Mhm. Do you think, though, that universities are becoming ideological battlegrounds where the students are actually being fed these ideas? Um,
Yeah, but that was true of the in the liberal arts. It's been true for a long time. Even before all this happened, they were always uh, professors see the student as a captive audience and a chance to propagate their lineage and require them to read all the professor's books and notes and articles and comment on them and you know apply it in their own lives and extend them and so on. So uh, the class became a sort of the congregation of the for the pulpit. The class became a place where the professor could be advocating and promoting his own points of view. So they did not like uh, the preaching by religions, but they're doing the same thing themselves.
mhm. Now, I saw a clip of yourself interviewing some women who were Hindu, I believe. They became Muslim, and then they left Islam. Um, what were some of the things that you learned from these women?
So I do. I have interviewed several ex-Muslims
Mhm.
like that, and yeah, I think that some of them had bad experiences. They were not raised in a religious way per se. They were the kind of nominal Hindus, like there are people who are nominal Jews.
Mhm.
They're just sort of Hindus by default. It's
Yeah.
like Hindu by default. It's not by a Hindu by actual, affirmation of faith and it's not in a positive sense that I really believe all this. I understand what my Hindu identity stands for. It's like I don't know, I don't understand, but I'm not anything else, so I'm a Hindu. Kind of Hindus by default. So there are people like that, and then they get married or somehow they get influenced, and then they convert. Some of the people close to our social circle, their kids have married a Muslim. And I have to tell them that the nikah, which is a ceremony, the legal, you have to sign the legal contract when you marry, called a nikah. In that, the nikah only is possible between two Muslims. So if one of them is not a Muslim, then there's a preface in which you are actually surrendering all your previous allegiances to any other religion and becoming a Muslim. All it takes is one liner that I renounce all other religions and I hereby call myself a Muslim, and then the normal marriage contract continues. People don't even want to talk, don't even want to go there. So I've had a few parents whose kids were marrying a Muslim look into this. If there is a nikah at all, it doesn't matter if the ceremony is they got rituals and they got symbolism of Hindus to make them happy. They will do Hindu symbolism and then do the nikah, which is what matters in the end. Okay, it doesn't matter what clothes you wore and you ate some Indian food or whatever nonsense and whatever, you had a dance and all kind of that showing off is nonsensical if the substance of the agreement, which is written down officially, signed with witnesses, says that this person has denounced other religion, their previous religion, become a Muslim. I've had people come back to me and either show shock that this was the case and they just discovered it, or some of them have tried to sort of say, yeah, but it doesn't matter. They are nice people, they're very good. They're just like us. So what can I do? I mean, the fact is that um, such people sometimes regret it later. And so then they come to me, the kids come to me and they want to tell their story. And so I tell them, okay, you tell your story.
Mm-hmm. Now, how much intermarriage is there in India between the Hindu and the
Not
Muslim?
not that much. Not that
Not.
much. It's not that much. But there is something called love jihad where they rope a Hindu in a nice way, deceive through deception, like I just mentioned. Hindus often don't even know that they're getting into this, and they'll be converted quietly, or they just fall in love with some really wonderful, amazing person. And there are a lot of very good Muslim people as individuals. As I said, there's nothing at all that I would complain about in terms of their character and how good they are compared to other regular non-Muslim people. They're just like anyone else. But the thing is that as long as you are a Muslim, you are required to abide by certain texts. And those are not a matter of interpretation. Those are not, it's not like in the Hindu case, you can believe or not believe, you can comply or not comply, you're okay. There are certain behaviors of good karma, and that's enough. The minimum requirement for the Muslim is more strict. You have to point 5 times a day and you have to recite certain things, and those things are putting those thoughts in your mind and programming your brain unconsciously or consciously. So being a Muslim and has a lot of requirements, a lot of formal requirements. So that is, to me, something that people need to take seriously. And we need to go to our Muslim friends and say, okay, when we are talking, privately between ourselves, everything is fine between us. But what happens when it's just Muslims among themselves, and and most of the people, or many of them, are clergy, or they are pro clergy, and they are really emphatic about the orthodoxy. What is your situation? Are you able to stand up to them? Uh, Not for my sake or anybody else's sake, but for your own sake. Are you able to stand up to them? That situation, that tipping point has not happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think
You know,
there is not a critical mass of educated, liberal, good Muslims wanting to unify and speak up against this.
mhm. The same thing, unfortunately, is happening in Israel. There are many Jewish Israeli girls that get caught up with, Arab Muslim men, and they take them to their villages, and then they get stuck there. They have many children, and a lot of times Israel has to rescue these women. They go in on special missions and they rescue them. So, a lot of similarities I see. But in closing, maybe we can speak about the India-Israel relationship in today's world, the alliance between Hindus and Jews. Why is it more important now than ever?
Yeah, this is very important because we are both isolated, separately facing these huge odds. And I'm a co-founder of two Hindu Jewish organizations. I'm probably the only one who's co-founded two. One is called the Hindu Jewish Coalition, and HJC. It's based here in New Jersey. There were two of us Hindus and two Jews. We formed it together. And that one has a more of a liberal, democratic leaning. And then another friend of mine and I co-founded the American Hindu Jewish Congress, AHJC, which is a Republican initiative. So I'm on the Hindu Jewish, unification kind of bandwagon in my own humble capacity in whichever political camp you want. I mean, if you are a Democrat, I can take you this way. If you are a Republican, I take you into the other one. I just would love to see these two communities come together. So We don't have a whole lot of funds, either of these. We are sort of idealistic and trying to do the right thing. But yeah, so let's see what happens. I mean, we need help, we need support. The new one, which is the American Hindu Jewish Congress, which is formed about a year ago with GOP congressmen and some support from the GOP side, is definitely looking for Jewish members to join. So if you go to ahjcongress.com, you can just join, or you go to the HJC, Hindu Jewish Congress, you can join. I would love to see more Jewish people get involved and more Hindu people get involved.
Yeah. I encourage everybody to join. How can people find more about you, buy your books?
Well, you should go to rajivmalhotra.com and you can put down my name. That's rajivmalhotra.com. I have written 20 books. You can see all of them there. And each book I launch 40, 50 places, have lots of videos. And so I have about 3,000 videos on YouTube. I have tens of millions of views there. So you can find me. I'm not hiding my views. I'm very open about who I am, what I believe in, and I stand by what I believe, because I think I'm not into hatred for anybody. I just want self-affirmation for my community, and I offer mutual respect. But the word mutual has to be there. I respect you, but I want you to respect me also. It's not unilateral, unconditional. I respect you no matter how much you kick me and can hate me. It's not that. I cannot respect somebody who hates me. I cannot, because then it comes back and it amounts to self-hatred. I want to respect you for sure, but I also want you to respect me. That mutual respect is my signature, offer, and that is that is the one non-negotiable belief system.
Thank you, Rajiv. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, for your courage, your clarity. I learned so much in this discussion, and I hope to speak to you again.
Absolutely, Daniel. So likewise, the pleasure is mine. We've had this interaction for the first time, and hopefully we'll have many more to come.
Yes,
All the best to your audience and to my audience. And I would like to tell my audience, please follow Daniel. Daniel, you should put in your links also.
Definitely.
And my links.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real, it is stored safely, it is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.